Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to our post-Miami review. I've just got back from Miami itself. It was a spectacular event. I'd love to know your thoughts on it all. I thought it was a race of two halves. First half of the Grand Prix I thought was pretty interesting. Lots going on, some really good and interesting overtakes, some action on track. Second half it really did settle down into something that was sort of much more sedate, wasn't it? With McLaren and particularly Oscar Piastri having it very much under control. This video, of course, is brought to you by Seedstream, as ever, the app that some friends and I created that is there to help you stay across all of your content, F1 news and content from your trusted sources all across the net, all across the web, in all forms, all sort of curated around things like breaking news stories and particular news topics. If you haven't yet seen it, can I please urge you to go and try it. It's totally free. You find it in the App Store and it's called Seedstream. Right, let's talk about McLaren's day, which was great. We'll talk about some of the controversies in terms of the overtakes that didn't quite work out, and we'll talk about Ferrari's decision making or lack of it. Let's start with the way the race began, because well, I guess let's start before that, because the race weekend was affected by weather. And of course we saw how that played out in qualifying because it was literally wet. But actually what happened on race day, when we woke up on Sunday morning, it was raining hard. There was a lot of weather, a lot of bad weather coming in, and we fully expected that to stay around for the race, but it didn't. And actually the fact this huge rainstorm that was predicted to hit the track just missed actually was probably the thing that really affected most of all the race strategy and the decisions people made around pit stops, when to make them, and of course which tyres to go on. So although the weather didn't play a massive part on Sunday in terms of the rain coming down and making the track wet, it still made a massive difference to the outcome of that Grand Prix, I think. It was a one-stop race, which I think Pirelli had tried to sort of encourage the two-stopper. Generally two-stop races tend to be a little bit more interesting because it gives more options when it comes to strategy, and so they went softer on the range of tyres they brought this year, but it was still a pretty comfortable one-stop race. And I think the fact that that weather was sort of predicted to hit, although it didn't, meant that no one was going to risk taking an extra stop if they thought they might have had to take another extra stop when the rain came to put on some wet tyres. So circumstances played out to ensure it was a one-stopper, which I think really made up for that that sort of game of two halves analogy that I gave at the beginning. Come on, Wills, keep up, mate. At the beginning of the race, you saw what happened, but it was a case of Lando Norris versus Max Verstappen into those first couple of corners. It was predictably aggressive from both. It was great racing from both. And it's easy to look at it now and say, look, Lando and Max had such a performance advantage over everyone else that actually it would have made sense for him to just be patient, to not try and win the race at the first couple of corners, knowing that he could have quite easily overhauled Max, I mean, as he later did, as the race unfolded. But that's easy to say from this perspective after the Grand Prix. You've only got to go back a couple of races back to Japan, where still McLaren had a faster car, but on that day it was Max Verstappen that pulled out an extraordinary lap in qualifying, got himself in front, was aggressive at the start, and the fact that they had so much sort of turbulent air around there that was negatively affecting performance meant that actually, even though McLaren had a quicker car, they still couldn't find a way past Max for the entire Grand Prix, and Max ended up winning. So from that point of view, you can understand to some extent why Lando and McLaren felt the need to sort of go a little bit more extreme at the start of the Grand Prix. Come on, boys, here you come. Come on. The fact is that they don't get to run the hard tyre, which is almost always the race tyre or a race tyre in a Grand Prix, because they only get 2 sets of it for the weekend. No one gets to run it really before the race itself, and so you're never quite sure as a team just how your car is going to perform on that tyre in the conditions, the temperatures particularly, that you have on race day. Now we know McLaren have a car that's generally quick everywhere in pretty much all conditions, but it doesn't take very much to swing that performance a little bit out of their window and back in towards someone else's. So that's why they'll have been wary. They won't have been as confident as it looks like they should have been after the Grand Prix, and that's why Lando felt the need, and he's a racing driver, so felt the need to go for a gap. I actually thought both played it fairly, both played it very well. And, you know, yes, it cost Lando. It actually cost Lando the win, if we're really honest, didn't it? Because it gave Oscar this unbelievable buffer to go and build a massive gap while the two were scrapping behind him. And, you know, a little bit later on in the race, when Lando did find his way back through just up behind Max, it took him some time to get past the Red Bull because, again, this is two of the best racing drivers in the world not making it easy for each other to get past, which is exactly what you want from the two best racing drivers in the world, or two of the best. So I thought that was just excellent entertainment for that first half of the Grand Prix. But yes, probably that decision of Lando's at the beginning, not that I'm criticising the decision at all, because I think it was the right one to make at the time, probably cost him the opportunity to go for a win. Having said that, McLaren had that race under control. From a team point of view, they were so far ahead. And Oscar Piastri just did it again, didn't he? Just absolutely calm, cool and collected. Just drove pretty much a perfect Grand Prix. Just did what he had to do, nothing more, nothing less. But that's exactly the right thing to do. And it puts him in a strong position. He's in a championship fight, genuinely now. He's a major contender. Something that he's not been in that position before, certainly not in Formula One. And it's going to be really interesting to see as this season plays out, first of all, how he manages to cope and adapt to that, but also how the team and the teammates end up playing out that dynamic as the season goes on. Because as I've said many times before, when Lando feels like the only guy that's in the way of him becoming world champion is the guy on the other side of his own garage, that becomes a whole different type of relationship. You quickly go from being teammates to being absolute bitter rivals on many occasions. I've seen it happen, as many of you know before, and I haven't really found a great solution to it. So that's one to keep a very close eye on as the season goes on. Red Bull, again in the hands of Max, you can never rule him out. I thought he did a very, very good job in a car that was nowhere near a match for the McLarens. McLaren just have this unbelievable means of looking after the rear tyres, particularly in high temperature circuits when others really struggle. And that was absolutely the case again in Miami. It was warm, it was humid. The track is a very fast track at times, and although it doesn't really have too much in the way of really fast corners, it is still a circuit where it's very easy to overheat tyres. A couple of big braking zones at the end of fast straights as well. And the McLaren seems to look after those things very, very well, which in race conditions, and that's why on race day they really come alive. In race conditions, it puts them in such a strong situation compared to their main rivals. It's what everyone else is scratching their heads and working out how they can kind of find a solution in their cars to get somewhere close to that particular trait of the McLarens. But it's not an easy thing to come by. So well done to McLaren. They've done an excellent job in creating that phenomenon with their car. And particularly in a year where so much focus is going to be on 2026 and beyond, it's going to be difficult, I think, for anyone to actually catch up. So let's look at Ferrari. Oh, quickly, Mercedes. Mercedes they're just there under the radar again, aren't they? Just below the radar, doing a very solid job. Actually, both drivers, but George lucked in a little bit with the virtual safety car, but actually did a really solid job again to find himself on the podium. So he's creeping along, George Russell and Mercedes, not very far away from the main pack, even though I don't think anyone would say they've got the fastest or even the second fastest car typically. So that's the good start to the season, really, given the circumstances for them. And let's quickly touch on Ferrari, because Ferrari had a difficult day, another difficult day. Their car is definitely not working the way they want it to. It's frustrating for the drivers, just as frustrating for the team, by the way. But the bit that really got me, and the bit that you saw all play out, I'm sure if you watched it on television, was that Ferrari lack of decision making, which has almost become synonymous with Ferrari, which is a terrible thing to have associated with your Formula One team, because it's one of the things that the best Formula One team should be absolutely on. They should be absolutely brilliant at making decisions. That's what makes a great high-performing team, is being able to make those fast decisions, have total trust in the people in your team to make those decisions. And look, Ferrari, already Lewis has only been there for 6 races, already you can tell he's questioning the team, and it's understandable, by the way. There's no criticism of Lewis Hamilton here. This is a Ferrari issue that's not new for this year. It's been around for ages. They've got this almost running joke that whenever you ask Ferrari a question, the answer that always comes back is, yeah, we'll get back to you. You know, this is Formula One, where hundredths of a second make a difference. And so to get back to you is not always something that you have the luxury of time to be able to do. You should be able to empower those people, the race engineers and the strategists, the people on the pit wall, to make instant decisions and give a communication back to the driver that instills confidence that we know what we're doing. And yet they seem to be doing the opposite of that right now. So that's frustrating. I think, you know, ultimately it comes from the fact that they just haven't got the car that they need to have right now. They're a long way from where they thought and hoped they would be this year. And very, very soon, there's going to have to be some big decisions about switching a lot more of their resource over to 2026. And not giving up on 25, but certainly not throwing too much into 25, knowing that the championship is very quickly slipping away and 26 is coming around the corner very fast. And that is a big opportunity, perhaps the biggest one for Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari. In terms of that actual decision, I thought, you know, we saw it all happen. They got it wrong in many ways, and actually the switching around back and forward between the two drivers, you know, one holding the other up, every time they switched they lost about 0.6 of a second to Antonelli just in the process of the little period of time where they were held up, and then the actual switcheroo. You know, it takes a bit of time to orchestrate, and clearly at least one driver loses out in that. So ultimately it meant Antonelli got away. I thought if they'd been much more clear and concise, I think they could have probably got Antonelli with either of their two drivers, in all honesty. Probably Lewis, if they'd made the switch straight away, with Lewis on different tyres and a different strategy. If they'd released him immediately, I think he'd have probably got Antonelli, and that would have been another position and some more valuable points. It didn't happen, and the questions are being asked inside and outside of the team, as they'll continue to be done, as it will continue to happen. I hope that they get this sorted out. No one wants to see a Ferrari that's struggling. I want to see these teams performing at the highest level right at the top of the field. And look, they haven't got a lot of time to be able to get to that position. So let's hope they can figure something out quickly for everyone's sake. Further back, Williams, what a great job for them. They are in a much, much better position. And this is all shaping up ahead of 26, where Williams see the biggest opportunity in their recent history. And that's exactly what it is. James Vowles building a team there, which is in really good shape right now, operating well, two good drivers, the car coming back towards the limit of performance as well. So that's a really solid performance. Let's go quickly all the way to the back. Jack Doohan, that looks, I feel really sorry for the guy, but it's looking more and more likely that he will not even be in that car for Imola. Lots of rumours came out a while ago where a sponsor sort of dropped a bit of a clanger as he thought the microphones and cameras were off, and he talked about Franco Colapinto driving in Imola, and it's looking actually more and more likely that that could happen. Jack Doohan's performance has not been good enough. I don't think his opportunity has been good enough, to be fair to him. I don't think they've given him a fair opportunity, and the pressure that he's been racing under since he began, I think, has been really unfair. So it's a difficult situation. I don't like to see anybody suffering in that way, but that is a story to keep an eye on. And if you want to keep an eye on any of those stories, go and get the Seedstream app. As I said, totally free from any of your app stores. Just search the word Seedstream or click the link in the description of this video. And until I see you again, have a great week. Ta-ra.